Hi, friends. Welcome back to the new tribe. I am excited to give you an update today. It's been about 5.5 weeks since I had my explant surgery, and I feel like it's enough time to actually be able to reflect on the changes I've experienced since removing my breast implants. And then I want to talk about some of the things that I'm navigating right now and really dive into the parent-adult-child relationship dynamic. So stick around, welcome, get comfy, have a nice hot tea or a coffee handy, and welcome back to the new tribe. Okay, so it has been 5.5 weeks since my breast implant removal surgery. I had an explant. I knew going into the surgery, as I talked about on a previous episode, that I could anticipate certain positive changes within my body after the surgery. But holy cow, the changes that I have experienced have been pretty aligned with what I expected, but just to a degree that I could not have anticipated. So obviously, the discomfort I was feeling in my chest directly from the implants, gone. My anxiety is the biggest one. I used to struggle with anxiety, intrusive thoughts, catastrophic thinking all the time, literally day to day. And if you followed me on social media, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that this is true. What I did not realize was that so much of those feelings and thoughts I was experiencing were the result of my implants. I have been deep on this journey of healing myself, mind, body, soul, for so many years. And I literally could never have anticipated that the amount of what I was experiencing, dysregulated nervous system, struggles in my mind, were not strictly the result of my traumas in my childhood and my past experiences, as I have shared so much of them with y'all here, but they were so much the result of the toxic implants I had in my body. And I read a lot about women who have gone through explants already, that there's so many of them that report that they have experienced tremendous improvement in anxiety and depression and other psychological issues or things that they were going through. And so I was extremely hopeful that I would also experience that. I've been down this path for so long now, and I have really dove head first into it. And one thing about me is I believe in radical honesty. So much so that it took me quite a bit of years to discover that that is not a common thing amongst humans. Most of us don't want to hear the hard truth all the time, because that makes me feel safe. It makes other people not feel safe. Anyway, with this relationship with honesty, I have navigated this journey of mine from a place of radical honesty, like getting extremely honest with myself, about my past, about my present, about how I show up in my mind, in my internal world, how I show up in the external world to the people around me. And the greatest gift along this journey has been the people who participate in that conversation with me. I have said numerous times that I believe the reason I moved to Dallas, like there were so many reasons, and it was such an important step along my journey, but I believe that the reason that I moved there was to meet my best friend, Aiko. And one of the points of purpose in our relationship, from my perspective, is that she is such a beautiful, loving person. Like her soul essence is just so much love and so much acceptance that she can communicate with me in a way that most people are afraid to communicate to me in. And I've come to understand that my degree of honesty can feel abrasive to other people. And guys, this is like, I'm learning this as I go, right? I made a commitment as a child to be very honest, and we can get into that later. But I've always been super upfront, which apparently is blunt, and very honest, which people call brutal. And I never understood why there were these associations with just trying to share truth, which I value so highly. And when I met Aiko, she was not afraid to share truth with me because she understands truth and she doesn't perceive it as brutal or harsh or any of those things. And because she just resonates in the space of love, she truly leads with her heart through her life and her connections to others. And she was able to see me from a space of love and not from a space of judgment or fear over the way that I connect, which can be very uncomfortable for people oftentimes. And because she is so open to receive, she was able to receive me. And also we connected in this beautiful heart space, because that's where we both are always working towards and working to stay in. That as we navigate the experiences in our lives, we're both trying to maintain this connection and this resonance in a heart space. And so it was something that we could recognize in each other right away. So with all of that being said, she was never afraid to speak openly to me and tell me the truth. And I'm so grateful for that, because it's something that I have searched for so long. It is like, I've tried to have conversations with my family, especially with my siblings, so as to adjust my perspective where I may need to adjust my perspective. We can only examine our own perspective from so many angles. And then beyond that, we have to share with one another. And I recognize that not everybody is interested in that. But again, I didn't understand for a long time that most people aren't working in the way that I'm working. And so I met Aiko, and she's working in the way that I'm working. And we're very different. We're very different. She's so gentle and she's so loving and she's so tender about the way that she engages with people. And I'm much more impatient, which I openly acknowledge. And my impatience, I believe, is perceived as like abrasion. And so where Aiko may gently walk into a conversation with you, I am going to be like, hey, here we go. This is where it is. I'm much less of a hand holder and more of a express lane fast car. And again, I've had to learn and recognize how to slow down, get all the way on the right side of the road and just like take it easy. But that's my journey within myself, has been more of that express lane, fast car, truth, honesty, like, let's get it, let's accept it, let's move to the next thing. Like, I want to keep digging and keep learning and keep growing and keep understanding. And I recognized really early on that if I took my own mind out of the way, I would hold myself back way less. And I would be able to more quickly and more easily identify the spaces where my subconscious holds me back. And so becoming as honest with myself as I could allowed me to bystep a lot of the conditionings that I carried and a lot of the lies that I would tell myself. I'm very honest with myself. And this helps me really to know myself, such as the fact that I can come off abrasive. And that's never my intention. It's been a really hard thing to navigate and understand because I know within myself that my intentions have never been to be harsh or hurtful in any way. It's just a reflection of the degree of non-judgmental truth I share within myself and I'm willing to accept within myself. So then I met Aiko, who's also in the same space, but from a totally different angle. She's very gentle. She's very easy. And she's very much more inclined to take you on a meander through your journey with her. But recognizing in me that she didn't have to do that, one of the very first things she told me when we became friends was she said to me, "You have control issues." I said, "What? Me? Are you sure?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, you know," and then she expanded on those thoughts and why she viewed me as someone that had control issues and where she saw it within me, which allowed me to take that perspective and apply it to my own and to see something that I was incapable of seeing before. And I did have control issues. I thought that I was an extremely easygoing, laid back kind of person. And she said, "You definitely are. When plans change, like you do not get ruffled. As life changes and navigates day to day, like you are so chill and not, you don't need to be in control of what happens in your days. You just need to be in control of what happens in your life." And what she did to me, what she did for me in that moment was that she like grabbed my perspective and yanked it backwards to where I wasn't looking at things as closely. And I value her so much because she's always willing to do that. She's always willing to just say straight out, "Hey, this is what it is." Or because she's more gentle than I am, she will tell me, "Perhaps if we look at it this way," or give me something to consider. And I value that so incredibly much. And she has had such a big impact on my journey. And I don't even remember why I got onto the ramble about her, but I love her and she's just such a gift to me and to my life. Okay, so this ramble about my best friend does relate to my experience with my surgery because I had done so much work, right? I had done a lot of really open-minded work within myself, and I still struggled so much with the anxiety. And I kind of started to consider maybe I just have to accept that this is part of who I am in this life, that my nervous system is so dysregulated that regardless of how much work or medicine I do, I'm just gonna, this is just, I'm gonna have to learn how to navigate life in this way. And so I was doing work towards accepting that, accepting myself as someone who has anxiety, who will randomly have an unexpected panic attack, and accepting that maybe this is what the rest of my life looks like. And that's the space that I was working in. And then I had my implants taken out, and holy heck, I cannot tell you the way that being in my body and my mind has become easy. And that was something I struggled with, was like, I felt like my cells were on fire. But now I realize that they were. The inflammation in my body was like irritating my soul. And I know that when we have inflammation in our bodies, it will often find the weak point in the body to congregate in. So, like if you have an old injury, a bad joint, a surgical site, something like that, or you're prone to inflammation in a certain organ. Whatever your weak point in your body is where that inflammation will congregate first. And we'll call that pain, and we'll call that disease. It can lead to and further agitate disease, illness. And so for me, I've come to realize, obviously, duh, Megan, you should have known this. You did know this, right? My weak point in my body is in my nervous system. Because of all the trauma, because of all of the things that I have experienced, my nervous system physically is the weak point in my body. So when I'm walking around with these implants in for 8 years, which are producing constant 24/7 round the clock for years, inflammation into my body, it is congregating in my nervous system. And I mean, the way my mind was blown when I realized this after probably like 3 weeks after my surgery. And I was like, man, I'm like not stressing. Obviously, am feeling a normal range of feelings, but I'm not stressing. And one of the biggest things was that my kids went with their dad 5 days after my surgery to another state. They went up to his property to go hunting and camping and do all these things and have fun. And normally I would be battling very intrusive thoughts that whole time. Like worst case scenario, my mind's constantly telling me they're doing this, and this is what you should worry about, and this is what you should worry about, and don't forget to worry about that. And I would constantly be battling these thoughts and trying to like talk myself through. Okay, like you gotta chill. It's fine. He's responsible. He's paying attention. Da 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 da. Like, they're doing outdoor stuff. They're hunting with guns. Like, there's so many things that I can worry about. And I chose to worry about all of them all the time. And so they go on this trip. And I first noticed the day that they left, it's about a 7-hour drive. And normally I'd be frequently checking in and watching, like tracking their location just to make sure like they're staying on time, everything's moving good, like everybody's good. And the day that they left, I only checked their location on the road one time, guys. And I only text them, I think, like twice during a 7-hour road trip. And I know I'm making it probably sound like I was super manic, and I wasn't. My actions, I had much more control over my actions than my thoughts. So my thoughts would be like, check, 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 check. And I'd be like, okay, it's not reasonable to check. I just checked in with them an hour ago. I'm going to give it one more hour and then I can check in. And so my actions were not as anxious as my thoughts were. But I am experiencing my thoughts are just like super normal. And my mind was blown. They go through their whole trip. They get home. Even Zach is like, you've done amazing, because he knows I would be talking to him like, oh, should I check on the kids? Have you heard from the kids? How are the kids? Do you think everything's good? Should I check on them now? And he, bless him, this man is an angel, always is just like, no, they're good. Everything's fine. But not just like in a placating way. He would like pull out details. Yeah, Scarlett texted me about 45 minutes ago asking me if I can send her a picture of her go-kart. Or, yeah, they text the group, an hour ago. Or whatever. Like, just he'd have information, reasonable information for me to relax. And he's like, I haven't had to, like, we haven't talked about it, like, at all. I haven't had to talk you through anything. And so that was one of the biggest, like, mind-blowing impacts of removing my implants, and that alone is 1,000,000% worth it. My vision's improving. I feel like over the last couple of years, my vision's really taken some weird turns, and I've been navigating some things that I still need to go back to. I have to see a neuro-ophthalmologist, but I'm confident that things will look good. And then my skin's looking better. My eyes are looking clearer. Like if you're on the tube watching the video here, my eyes look much clearer, and I just feel good. I'm getting to a really good point in my physical recovery where, I have much more movement and usage of my arms. And so if you or anyone that you know are considering removing an implant, or, this goes for fillers and all the things that we do to ourselves, I highly, highly recommend to you that you give it very serious consideration and that you do your research. It doesn't matter what kind of implant you have. If it is silicone, research breast implant illness, because the silicone that goes into our bodies, and even if they're saline breast implants, the shell is still silicone. Just research it. Do your own research. And I have also been writing a guide for how I navigated my recovery using only herbs. I developed a protocol for myself for post-op recovery, and I did not use any antibiotics or pain medication. And I am writing that guide now. So stay tuned, keep an eye out, and I'll share it with y'all when it's ready. Okay. So that's the surgery update. The life update. I really haven't talked too much about my own experiences with my family in quite some time because, I haven't been having any new ones. And with all of with the space that I've been in within my own work, my journey, it has been more of it's been a more vulnerable and tender space, I think, because it's a lot of the things that I share happened so long ago that there's a piece with them for sure. But where it comes to the sexual abuse trauma and then the traumatic experience of just trying to navigate it with my family after the memories came up, after I started sharing about it, it's very fresh, and I've been trying to find my own peace with it. I have talked about it, but not so much the experience of within my family through that time. And it's been about 2.5 years. And at that time, my mom just didn't talk to me. She texted me back and forth a little bit, and then she never talked to me again. About 5 months after, okay, so let me rewind. For those of you who don't know, I was at a point in my own journey of healing that I felt very called to connect to myself. And as a mother of 3 who hadn't been alone since really ever. I got married when I was 19, had my first son at 20. Prior to that, I was living with the siblings in my family, and I was never alone. I hadn't reached that part of my life yet. And then I had kids, and then, you're never alone when you have kids. And I realized I was 33 or 34 at the time. And I didn't really know who I was. I was learning a lot about myself, but I really needed the space in my life to integrate who I was becoming. So I decided to take a 2-month trip and went as literally far away from my life as I could. And from Texas, I went to the other side of the world, and I went to Bali, and I did yoga teacher training, and I met some beautiful souls, one of which who I'm still very close to today. She was my yoga teacher training roommate. And I had space. For the first time in my life, the only thing I had to worry about was me. Only my needs, only me, you know? I mean, it was an incredibly challenging experience to put myself in because I was so far away from my kids, and I had to frequently work to come back to my center that like I chose to be here, and I have to trust that they're good, that everything is safe, and you know they're taking care of where they're at because I was so far away. And I mean, you're on the other side of the world, like what are you going to do if anything happens? And so with that, I really made an effort to like trust and put it out of my mind what could be going on at home. And in this time, I began having memories of sexual abuse from my mother's father start to surface. And I had always known that there was sexual abuse trauma somewhere in there, but I had no memories of it. I had no idea who it was, but anyone else who has carried this trauma knows that you don't have to have the details to know. And so I'd always known that it was there, but I was perfectly happy to just let that skeleton stay in the closet. But while I was away and I was on my own and I had space, my mind decided it was time for me to work through those things. And so when my mom found out, it became this big case of denial. I wasn't going to tell my parents. I reached out to my siblings while I was away, but I was going to wait until I got back to the States to tell my parents. But in some insane twist of fate, my biological grandfather, left a comment on one of the videos I had posted while I was away. And he commented on the video and said, "Love that ass." And I felt like in the moment that I saw that, I felt like I obviously, like this is being shoved to the forefront. This is like in my hands proof. And it wasn't the first time he had left weird comments, but I have always deleted them and pushed them out of my mind and just pretended like it never happened. But it was the first time in a while. And the fact that it happened right at the moment where I'm actively having this conversation with my siblings about all of this, I felt like it was not my decision to keep it to myself until I got back to the States. So I took a screenshot and I sent it to my mom, and all she said was, "OMG, I'm so sorry." And then I just opened up and I said, "I know, I remember." And she was like, "What? I was never sexually abused." And then I had to explain to her that I was not referring to her. Although I personally don't believe that's true, but that's neither here nor there. My mom has always had this very awkward and weird obsession with her father. And we've all kind of been like, you know, I mean, the last that I had any relationship with her my entire life, I doubt this has changed. She's always called him my daddy, my daddy. And she very much turns into a small child with him. He cannot talk to her for years and then call her and need something, and she will drop literally everything and run to him. So it's not a healthy dynamic. And I knew it was not going to be easy for her to accept. But I thought that having that proof would at least be like, there's something to what I'm saying. Never mind the fact that he's been accused by numerous people. And she has always blamed whoever has accused him of doing something. Her stepsisters of different marriages, he's been married so many times. Her stepsisters of different marriages were just trying to break them apart. And it's always been, for some reason or another, that he's the victim of all these crazy women. And so there was no way my mom was going to accept that the person she admired and desired more than anyone else in the world had done something like this. And frankly, I think that she knew, because I've known for so many years. I've heard from her. I know of all of the allegations from her. And I think that she knew things, but because she desires her father's affection so intensely, I don't think she was capable of staying away. And so, in very typical perspective of my mother, she likes to just avoid things, ignore things, pretend they're not there. Oh, that sounds a little familiar, right? When I was thinking about my anxiety. She does that with a lot of things, though, most things, anything really that makes her uncomfortable. And I think that she's done that with the truth about her father. But what I didn't expect was that my siblings would have such a difficult time with it as well. Like I said, nobody was surprised about it. The man is a creep. And there's a lot of reasons that it's not shocking to anyone. But it is shocking to have to face something suddenly, right? And so my siblings really struggled. And my brother put it the best way is that he said, our families are always been like a disaster, but this feels like a nuclear bomb just went off. And it did. And my siblings didn't know how to navigate, accepting what I was saying about their mother and misinterpreting, because, my flavor of truth is very direct, and misinterpreting that I was expecting them to choose her or me. I just expected them to hold accountability for the truth that they expressed to me that they believed. And no one could, and again, I don't blame them, but no one was capable of holding her accountable, which kind of just flattened me. It left me with no one to support me. And it was much easier to create a narrative that I was like creating a problem in some way, that I was drawing a line. But what I was doing was holding an expectation. And so the person who probably got the most brunt of it was my dad, because I told him one day I had come home from Bali, and it was about 2 months after I got home. I had gotten settled back in at home and finally couldn't put it aside any longer. After my mom denied everything and my siblings sort of were like, I don't know how to support you in this. That happened while I was away. I was like, I just wanted to focus on my experience that I was having, and I knew that I was going to fall apart at some point, but I did not want to do it on the other side of the world by myself. And so I just put it all on the back burner and tried to enjoy being where I was being and just sort of like trickle through processing it. But once I got home, reunited with my kids, got settled in, it just all started to unfold more and more. And there was this also has been like 3 months for my siblings, so it's been festering under the surface for everyone. And there was at one point that I had posted something on Instagram about it, and one of my brothers took quite a bit of offense to my post and called me and said, you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. And he was pretty combative. And my position remained at that point that, like, I feel like it's fair for me to expect the siblings that I have been there for your whole lives to be there for me. I was put into a role of picking up a lot of slack for my mom as a kid, and then she habitually disconnects from her children when they hit puberty. And so I more so stepped into that role with my siblings and took care of them in a lot of ways and housed them after I was married and all of these things. And I was always there for them when they needed something. And this was the first time I needed something, and no one was capable of being there. And again, different perspectives, right? Like, I have been groomed to be the adult my whole life, and they had not. And my brother and I got into quite an argument over it. And I wasn't satisfied with our argument. So I called my dad and I told him what a disappointment as a father he was, because his sons were incapable of supporting me and that he failed them. And I said a lot of very honest and hurtful things to him. But they weren't just hurtful, like I pulled them out of thin air and made them up in order to hurt him. They were hurtful because they were a truth that he did not want to hear and that people don't like to acknowledge. But everything had come to a head, and I couldn't not say these things to him when I'm seeing in real time how the father that he was and the way that he raised his children was in a lot of ways a failure in that moment. And again, this is all my opinion, and this is the reaction of, in that moment, I'm a little girl, that the trauma that lived inside of me was finally surfacing. I was experiencing everything from the perspective of a little girl who needed her parents there, who needed to be protected and needed to be loved and needed to be heard and believed. And she was like a festering wound, had been in there for nearly 30 years. And so my dad, being who he is, it's all about how he experiences things, and there's no consideration for where I was at and what I was experiencing in that way. And so he quit talking to me after that conversation, which is fair. I mean, it wasn't an easy conversation. It wasn't a polite conversation, but it was a conversation that needed to be had. It was some things that he needed to hear, because, again, even at that moment, he was not holding anyone of his children or himself accountable for the way that I had been treated through that experience and was continuing to be treated. If you don't want to talk to me, don't talk to me, but don't call me and pick a fight with me either. And so anyway, from that point on, that was actually right at 2 years ago, we never talked. We stopped, and my dad was already estranged from my life from the ages of 16 to 26, which was, I stopped talking to him in protest of the way he'd been treating my sister, who at that time was 11 or 12 years old. And he just treated her with such hateful disgrace. The way that he would speak to people, including his own children, it was just the amount of hate he must have for himself. You could feel is palpable. And the way that he spewed it at his kids. There was nothing that she could do. She was so young. She had no control over anything, and there was very little that I could do. So the only thing that I could do was cut him out. I refused to talk to him. I refused to interact with him. I refused to have anything to do with him, so as to highlight what he's doing and who he's being and how wrong he was. And so fast forward to 10 years, I've gotten married, I've had my kids, and I haven't had my dad in my life for any of those things. And my siblings start to encourage me to reconnect with him. That, you know, he's changed so much and he's learned a lot and da-da-da-da. So slowly I began to let him back into my life, and it was a couple of arm's length distances. And then very shortly after that, maybe like 8 months later, my ex-husband and I moved our family to Tennessee. So it was easier to maintain a relationship with him long distance at that point. But we never were very close. The closeness was that he would call me and talk to me about all of his problems and inability to maintain a relationship, because he'd pick some pretty questionable women and then complain to me about why he's struggling and it's so hard for him. So I clocked a lot of therapy hours with him. So he really, like, again, there's no parent showing up from my perspective. I am the parent to everyone in this dynamic. And then I, have this conversation with him 2 years ago, and he did not like it. And so we stopped communicating. But in the last year or so, he has taken to where he will start sending me photos, old photos of my kids. I mean, there were only a handful of years that he was even an active part of their lives. And so it's the same photos again and again. And, I'll respond to them sometimes, and sometimes I don't say anything. But he never responds with any words. And I finally said to him yesterday, he sent me a photo collage his phone had made. And I said, please stop. If you are going to choose not to interact with me or communicate with me, I don't need to be stuck on this memory lane with you. And the reason that you have the same photos on repeat is because you choose not to be part of our lives. So please stop playing this bullshit game with me. And then we got into a whole conversation where he pretty much was telling me that I relinquished him of any responsibility to our relationship when I called him and told him what a garbage father he was. And that, he no longer had the luxury of sharing how he feels with me and whatever. It was really dramatic and did not acknowledge any of the points of conversation that I brought up, and tried to bully me by saying, like, if you really want to go there, you better be careful because I don't say anything and I could remind you of this and that. And I'm like, literally, dude, you've barely been a part of my life, first of all. Second of all, there's nothing you could do or say. And so anyway, we ended up, when he's trying to harass me with some mythical power he has over my head that he's trying to make me afraid of. And I said, you're right, because he kept telling me I destroyed things, I ruined things. And I said, you're right. I did destroy everything and I enumerated and listed out numerous things that he has done that they arrest people for throughout our lives. And the fact that this 60-year-old man, one, needs to have a text argument with his estranged daughter. Like I told him, if you wanted to be relinquished of any responsibility to this relationship, you had that when I was 16. You could have just stayed gone. I used to pray every night that he would not come home. I obviously, we all knew kids whose dads abandoned them. And I would pray that he decided not to come home, that he decided to stay with his girlfriend, or that he would get hit by a car or something. That's the type of father he was. Those were my prayers when I went to bed at night. And now, 30 years later, he wants to try and bully me that things are my fault. So it's had me thinking about the parent and adult child relationship dynamic. It is my opinion and my practice with my own children that it's always the parent's responsibility first and foremost to establish and maintain the foundation of the relationship. We can't expect a baby or a young child or an adolescent child to have a partnership share in the development of the bond. Kids at that young stage are literally only responsible for exploring the world. And you, me, the parents, are responsible for making sure that they feel safe enough to do that, for making sure that they feel secure enough to go explore the world and know that they have a safe place to come back to. Like, that's your job. That is your job as the parent. And when you build that foundation when they're young and they don't know about what a relationship is, I mean, gosh, infants don't even know that they are individuated from the mother for the first 6 to 8 months of life, I believe. Look it up. And so how can any reasonable, fully formed frontal lobe adult being believe that the child has any responsibility to developing the relationship and the bond with their parent? As we age, obviously, we have independence and our own thought processes and outside influences and all of these things, these other factors. But what I'm noticing with my kids, and again, they're only teenagers, so I can only speak to the first, up to 16 years of life. Mine are 16, 14, and 12. And I have a beautiful relationship with my children. It's something that I very proudly get complimented on all the time, is not only just who my children are, but how connected to me they are, that they talk to me, they're affectionate to me, they're respectful to me. And I know that that comes from the fact that I prioritized building a secure and safe bond with them, making sure that they knew, hey, go play, go explore, go have fun. I'll be here. If you need anything, I'm here. They knew that I was there to take care of them, because when they would come back, there would already be food waiting for them. Their needs were met before they had to express their needs. But they also knew that if I was not capable of anticipating all of their needs, that they could talk to me about it. They could share it with me, and that I would receive them with an open-minded, loving perspective from my heart. And that I haven't always done that, and I haven't always done it perfectly, but that's my intention always. And if I do not perceive them in the way that they are trying to express themselves, sure, sometimes we may butt heads a little bit, but it always comes back to, we're going to have the conversation until we understand each other. And the conversation doesn't need to be screaming, and it doesn't need to be fighting. That is something that I have intentionally kept away from our household. I got enough of that in my own childhood. And obviously, raising your voice is sometimes necessary, especially with younger kids. They communicate through understanding a tone. I have not shied away from using my voice to communicate with my kids, but I have also never spoken to my kids from a space of of hate or loathing or disdain in the way that I've heard from my father. So even when I raise my voice or I get firm with my kids, it comes from a place of love. And so my voice still has a direct and a clear, but a loving tone. So over these years, I have been able to watch the way that raising my kids with intention has actually really paid off a lot. And I see how they now interact with the relationship, especially my 16-year-old, right? So he's driving now. He wants more independence. He wants more responsibility. And he can communicate these things to me. He can and has said, hey, I don't feel like you're giving me enough consideration. I don't feel like you're trusting me enough. And I can receive him and say, I'm having a hard time trusting you because, and then we can navigate this and we don't lose our foundation and it doesn't damage our bond. Because I know that he's a teenager working through figuring out how to stand on his own feet. It's like a little baby giraffe right now. And he knows that I've never been a mom of a teenager before, so we're learning this together, but we're really open about it. And we also recognize and know that maintaining a loving space is the most important part of it. So that's just my opinion of the parent and adult-child dynamic. I know that there's a lot of people who will disagree with it because their children have done something that, maybe has harmed them or put them in a bad position. And obviously there are extenuating circumstances in some relationship dynamics where, the child has grown up and caused great harm to the parent. And so what I'm referring to is more of a average situation. I know that there are some circumstances that don't align with this, and that's okay. One thing that's really important to remember about the fact that there are so many voices in the world, and the internet gives us all a platform, is that not all of the voices are going to speak to us directly. And so my intention with the new tribe is to be a voice that speaks to the people who resonate with what I have to say. And if you don't resonate, but you're here anyway, I freaking love you for that. And if you do resonate and have a perspective to share on either the parent side or the adult child side, or if you're like me and you're like navigating it from both sides, right? You're the parent and the child. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your experiences and your perspectives. I think it's such an important conversation. And unfortunately, it's not a conversation that is open to be had within my family. So that's why we have our tribe, right? To navigate these things together. And as always, I appreciate you being here so much. And thank you for hanging in my rambles. I really enjoyed some aspects of this little trip down memory lane. I didn't really plan to get into all the things that I did today, but it's always good. I feel like a lot of this I have shared over the years on Instagram, but I haven't really pulled all the pieces together over here on the podcast. So I look forward to getting into more of my own story in future episodes. And I hope that you will share your stories with me. And if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, just shoot us an email. And that's all I got for y'all today. Okay, go with love.